Well, good Monday morning to you. Welcome to our Monday morning live edition of the Doctor's Nutrition Show. I'm your host, Jim Tabor, along with Doctors Jim and Janine Fox of Doctor's Nutrition, located on Cal-and-Lorraine Road in Gulfport, just south of Pass Road. We do this every Monday morning as a live show, and we invite you to call in and ask questions regarding our topic of the day. And our phone lines are open at 896-0713 or 800-349-0713. You can pass your question on to our producer, and they'll pass it along to us. Well, as October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, we're going to be talking about breast health today. Every year in the United States, about 264,000 cases of breast cancer are diagnosed in women, about 2,400 in men, about 42,000 women, and about 500 men pass away from breast cancer each year. So we're going to try to, talk about the health and everything. What can a woman do to reduce her risk of breast cancer?
Ooh.
We always preach prevention, and that's what we're going to be talking about today is more prevention.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of things that you can do. For one, they've definitely linked being overweight to increased risk of breast cancer. Now, that does not mean that if you're not overweight, you cannot get it, because I have seen many women that get breast cancer that are not overweight.
Sure.
But that is something that you can do. So, they're definitely the things that you can do are eat better, don't keep your BMI at a normal, which is your body mass index. You want that to stay normal, and just be healthy as a whole. But there's a lot of nutrients we're going to talk about that can actually definitely make a difference in your risk factors.
And if you're not sure about how to check your BMI, you can go online and Google it. How do I check my BMI?
Yeah.
But it has to
Pretty
do with
easy.
they got
your age and your weight and everything like that.
No, actually, it's your height and weight. Height and weight. So it's actually pretty easy to do. And then they'll tell you if you're in range or too much, or, most people are a little over their BMI, but not everybody. But again, that's important. Now, when you say what can they do to decrease the risk? Well, some risks you can't change. The big risks are if it's in your family. That you can't change. At what age you start your cycle is a risk factor. If you're under 10 when you start, that's a risk factor. If you have not had kids by the time you're 30, that's a risk factor. So those risk factors, after a certain point, you can't change it. Now, what you eat, what you drink, drinking too much alcohol has been shown as a risk factor. And actually, it's kind of controversial, but I do believe that it's true, is actually wearing a bra too much is a risk factor. And a lot of people don't realize that, especially the underwires, and especially when they're worn like all the time. They said when it's 24 hours a day, the amount that it increased the risk was a lot.
Right.
That was actually kind of crazy. So you do want to, not wear it if you don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're not out, don't wear it. So it's one of those things, and even if you don't have to, wear the ones that are not quite as tight with no underwires, and really they don't lift, but that's kind of
like
one of the things
bra.
you see. Yeah, but if they're too tight, that still does it, because it's about lymphatic drainage. So there's things like that you can do. People don't even think about that one. But there's a lot of controversy out there about that one, because they're really showing it in some of the studies.
Yeah, so it's back to the old burn the bra thing.
That's back a long time ago.
That was a long time ago.
Back in the 60s or something like that?
It was a long time ago.
I wish they would have succeeded.
Well, yeah.
But that is definitely one of the risk factors.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, there's a lot of nutrients. And one of the biggies, as always, vitamin D.
Mm-hmm.
Vitamin D, again, has had a lot of research on prevention of all kind of cancers, not just breast cancer. D is very easy to check and very easy to increase. So it's something that is easily done. You kind of need to know where your levels. More is not always better. You got to know where you are and know after you do take your D, what levels are then. So D is important. Now, another nutrient that to me has been, it's amazing the stuff coming out on it, is iodine. And when you say it's coming out on it, you look back, and they were saying this back in the 1920s.
Yeah.
Iodine deficiency increases breast cancer pretty good bit, also prostate cancer. So it actually, even in men with breast cancer, it doesn't matter, men, women, it is a risk factor, and iodine is very deficient in people. We can check iodine. It's not the cheapest test. It's like $65 just to check the iodine, but we have a lot of people that do it. I rarely have somebody come back that's normal.
Without them taking a lot.
Without them taking iodine. And we live in an area that shouldn't be as deficient because seafood.
I was going to say the fish.
Seafood is why you actually get iodine. Well, iodine deficiency was so big in the middle of the country is why they iodized salt years and years and years
Back
ago.
in the 20s or 30s, yeah.
And they did it to keep you from getting goiters because everybody knows iodine's important to the thyroid. Well, they're saying it's actually probably even more important to the breast and the prostate. So that's actually it's a very inexpensive nutrient to take. Again, you don't want to overdo it. Overdoing it can cause problems, but not getting enough. So that is a level that you can check to see, and there is no doubt that it makes a difference. Now, we have so many people come in with fibrocystic breast disease, and there is a lot of women out there that have that. And fibrocysts, they actually, yes, it's not cancer, but they're actually saying it could be a risk factor. If you have fibrocyst, you are at more risk for breast cancer. And the two things that we do for the fibrocyst, and it works. Now, if you have tender, sore lumps in the breast that are not cancer, we always say if you feel that, have it checked. But if it's not, it's usually fibrocyst. Primrose oil and iodine together, it's just like goes away. So we have so many women that cannot believe. Now, vitamin E has been used for years for fibrocyst. It's not going to hurt to add vitamin E, but it does not work as well as primrose oil to me. So a lot of women come in and say, I need vitamin E for that, but I think primrose oil and iodine are more important.
Yeah, I mean, that's just what we see clinically. When patients come in and take our recommendations, because we've used it for, 30-something years.
Gosh, we've used it.
A long time, okay? A long, too long.
I take it myself.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just one of those things that, we know if we give that female patient that evening primrose oil, it's almost guaranteed that within a week or so, they're going to come back and tell you, boy, that stuff works.
Yeah.
And that's rare to have a supplement that's that easy. Then they come back just automatically and say, that really works.
So it really does work. And if you have fibrocyst, you definitely want to do the primrose oil and iodine.
Yes.
Our primrose oil is a pretty strong one, so you don't have to take as many. They're like 1,300 milligrams. There's some out there as low as 500 milligrams. We use at least the 2,600 milligrams a day, sometimes even more depending on the person. So that is something that you definitely can do. And if you have that problem, the iodine, like I said, for the prevention that it gives you for other things is essential. And if you want to check your levels, we can do that.
Okay. All right. Our phone lines are open at 896-0713 or 800-349-0713. We're talking about breast health. So we'll take a break and we'll be right back. And welcome back to our Monday morning live edition of the Doctor's Nutrition Show. We're talking about breast health, as this is Breast Cancer Awareness Month in October. We're talking about the things that you can do. What other things can people do as a preventative?
Exercise. Like we always talk about exercise. I think some of the studies show that exercising 30 minutes a day, as little as 3 to 4 times a week, will reduce your risk by 25%.
Wow.
So that's actually pretty good. So that's another thing you can do. Like I said, some things you can't help and prevent or anything like that, but some things you can change. And then another one is not to be constipated. Go to the bathroom regularly, because there's no doubt constipation's been linked with a few different cancers. I mean, yes, colon cancer, but yet breast cancer as well. And so if you don't get rid of toxins, and so a lot of people, do take fiber, and fiber is a good thing. But for breast health, the best fiber is flax. Now, I prefer getting flax seeds and freshly grinding them to get your fiber, and that way you get some of the oil as well. But the flax fiber has something called lignans, and the lignans have a lot of good research for breast cancer prevention and breast health. So, and again, it helps. Most of the stuff we talk about that is good for breast cancer is also good for prostate cancer. So it is actually good for men and women. And it's actually, and like you said, men get breast cancer too.
Yeah.
So it's not just for women. We're talking about just in general, these things can actually help with, cancers prevention, even in men. So the flax lignans are also good, and your omega-3s are always good. And flax is an omega-3, but we do prefer fish oil as well. And then we mentioned the iodine, but then selenium is another mineral that has been very beneficial. So there's a lot of things there's so many things you can do. And I tell people, if you're at risk or if you've had breast cancer, I tell women all the time, if you've had breast cancer, you definitely need to be doing prevention. Even if they say, oh, well, I've had a mastectomy. Well, yeah, but it can come back, and it don't necessarily come back in the breast, but it's still breast cancer. So you actually want to do stuff for preventative that way.
Yeah.
We use a lot of different things. We have something called DIM, diindolylmethane. DIM just helps all kind of, hormonal imbalances, I guess you would say. It is good for men for prostate as well, but we use it in women a lot. It regulates cycle, it helps fertility, it levels mood, helps hormonal weight gain. I mean, if you look, DIM has so many things that it does, but then the breast health is one of them. And when you start looking at it, DIM, along with something called, now this sulforaphane or sulforaphane, I don't know how, there's different people say it different ways.
Depends on what part of the country you're
Depends
from.
on where you are.
Yeah.
I mean, we've heard it both ways.
Yeah.
But they both come from cruciferous vegetables. And your cruciferous vegetables are your broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, and those foods are very good for breast health. And both of those chemicals, it takes a lot of the vegetables to equal, I know in DIM it takes about 10 pounds of those vegetables to equal what's in the pills.
That's per day.
Per day, exactly. So
That's
most
a lot.
people don't do that. That's why a lot of people have to take it. But both of those things are very beneficial.
And that sulforaphane or sulforaphane, depending on where you're
However
from.
you want to say it.
However you want to say it. Because I've been chastised both ways for saying it. But anyhow, the sulforaphane takes the broccoli sprout.
Yeah.
And they're great on a salad. I mean, if you've ever tried them.
Broccoli sprouts are
sprouted
good.
broccoli seeds, they're great on a salad. And they're loaded with a sulforaphane.
And they're hard to find around here, but you can get the little kits and grow them yourself. It's
grow 'em
really
yourself.
easy.
Wow.
'Cause we've done that.
Yeah.
So you can actually do the little sprouted stuff yourself.
Okay. We have a question. I'm having different issues with my legs. Is this a neurology problem, and what can I do about it?
Well, it depends on what kind of honestly, that's way too vague to say
Yeah.
if it's neurological, because it depends on what you're having.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, if it's burning, tingling, numbness, that is neurological
Yeah.
normally. But with just saying issues with my legs, if they're swelling, that's not normally neurological. So it depends on what it is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
All right.
that one's hard to answer.
896-0713, 800-349-0713. Does nutrition play a role?
Oh, yeah.
It does. Well, just like we've been talking about all these things that you can do, certain foods you eat, et cetera, et cetera. And another part of nutrition, and it's really part of nutrition, that you really want to focus on is staying away from certain things.
Yes.
For instance.
Let me guess. Sugar.
Well, that too,
Yeah,
yes.
That too. Okay, yeah, as always, sugar.
And chemicals.
And then the chemicals. Now, and I think I've talked about this before, but back earlier part of this year, or end of last year, when they did the study, and at University of California, I think it was Berkeley that did the study. They found they examined the food supply, okay, and they found 109 different chemicals, not food, chemicals in the food, 109. 52, I think, of 50 something of which they had really never seen there before. It was like these were the first time they showed up. 42 of which they did not have a name for this stuff.
That's scary.
Scary as hell.
Yeah.
Think about it. You got 42 things that a chemist, and these guys are great at naming stuff, and they couldn't name
They
it.
had no idea what it is.
They didn't
No.
know what it was. They said, "Geez, we can tell you what structure is, but we don't know what it is or what it does."
And that way, I mean, actually, talking about toxins,
Yeah.
another thing we use, and one of the reasons, and I take it myself, just a low dose every day, just because we do live in a toxic world, and we do eat organically, and so you can eat organic and you still get toxins because
Yeah.
of the rainwater. So it's hard to get away from it completely, but there is something called calcium D-glucarate.
Yes.
It actually works on the glucuronidation pathway of the liver, which is one of the things that gets rid of toxins and carcinogens. And it has actually been, people have written little books about it and everything called the nutrient for cancer, just because of the way it detoxifies. So detoxification is huge.
Huge.
And, not putting toxins in is a big thing.
Right.
But
Step
actually,
one.
we're all going to get traces and we're all going to get some. And that's where the calcium D-glucarate comes into play.
And the plasticizers or plastics are
Yeah.
probably one of the biggest culprits. I wish they wouldn't wrap meat in plastic anymore, but they do. It used to, you go into the butcher, they wrap
They wrap it in paper.
Paper,
Right,
yeah.
They don't do that anymore. They put it in plastic. And that's, that's a downside of living in a plastic world.
All right. Is it possible to take too much vitamin D? And what would be the consequences of taking too much?
Yes, you can.
Yes, you can.
And we see some people, we don't see a lot,
No.
but we see some people that do have high D. And I've had, basically what they'll say is, you can have fatigue, you can have hair loss, you can have, there's a list of symptoms you can have from having too much. Now, some people, if it's barely over, might not have any symptoms. But we have seen people that come in that are too high that say they do have symptoms, and some people don't.
Yeah.
I always say you want to catch it before you get symptoms. So that's one reason to check your vitamin D level. It's very easy to do. It's a simple blood test.
Right.
Yep.
All right. 896-0713 or 800-349-0713. Our phone lines are open to you. We're going to take a break, come back with our final segment and with this week's special. And welcome back to our Monday morning live edition of the Doctor's Nutrition Show. This is our final segment of the morning, so if you have any questions, please feel free to pick up the phone and give us a call, 896-0713 or 800-349-0713. We are talking about breast health this morning, but if you have any other questions regarding anything, please feel free to call in, just like this one. Caller calls in, I'm having a problem with constipation. I go to the bathroom maybe once every 3 to 5 days. I take Miralax every morning, and it
they cut off.
It doesn't seem to be helping. I really don't want to take any more laxatives. Is there anything else I can drink or take that will help with this problem?
Yes.
Well, back to the flaxseed thing that we talked about, the fiber thing, and lots of water, tons of water. And and even then, something else that you might just want to get checked would be your thyroid.
Yeah, thyroid can cause constipation. And also, to me, probiotics.
Yes.
Now, we hadn't mentioned probiotics being also good for breast health, but it's very good for breast health. So probiotics are real important in going to the bathroom, and there's specific ones we use to actually help. There's also magnesium. Magnesium can actually help. But I always say start looking to see what else might be causing this, because you've got to get that fixed. And, and we don't like laxative dependency.
No.
If you don't have to. Now, if that's all that it works, then you have to do something. But we try to do it without a lot of laxatives. And so if you come by the store or you give us a call, we can talk to you about it. But there's no doubt, you've got to get to go in the bathroom.
Yeah, that's a really big one. It really is.
All right, well, let's look at our special for this week, what we have to offer.
And we're going to do the DIM that we talked so
DIM.
much about. Yeah.
Diindolylmethane. It's actually probably one of our bigger sellers anyway, because it's used for so many different things, but breast health is one of them. And there's a lot of research on DIM and breast cancer prevention. It's even been shown to help if you have the gene for breast cancer.
Yeah,
so
the BRCA gene.
Dr. Michael Zelik is who, the DIM that we get, he holds the patent on it. And he, he's done extensive research, and a lot of the stuff out there about DIM is put out by him.
Yeah.
And so definitely DIM is something to try. It changes the pathways of the estrogens to where it's not the bad kind. So, and DIM, like I said, helps so many things: hormonal hair loss, hormonal weight gain, mood, regulate cycle if you still have one. So it really does help with a lot of different things.
All right. I have another question. Is there any other way to get iodine other than seafood? Is there a supplement I can take?
Oh, yeah, there's all kind of supplements.
There's a lot of supplements. We have a liquid and we have a pill. Yeah. The pill's much stronger than the liquid. And like I said, we'll talk to you to decide which one might be best for you, because it depends on the person. And actually, table salt has iodine. It's not necessarily always the best form, but people just don't want to go eat a bunch of salt. So that's but it was iodized years ago because people were iodine deficient, and iodine is so important.
But a lot of people now are doing the Himalayan salt.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it does not have iodine.
How about sea salt?
It does not have a lot.
It doesn't have a lot.
Doesn't have near what table salt, because it is actually supplemented.
If you go to the grocery store and look, it says iodized salt.
Now actually, it's the food that has tons, seaweed.
Yeah.
That's your best source of iodine, actually. But seaweed is not always. We're not in an area that is.
Well, unless they wrap it in sushi or something like that,
well,
they do that.
Actually,
that stuff always gets caught in my throat.
Like seaweed salad and stuff like that you can get at some of those restaurants. But seaweed is the other food that is really high, other than seafood. But it kind of comes from the sea too.
Yeah.
So,
but
actually,
who doesn't like seafood?
Seaweed. Yeah. But we definitely have supplements. So.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there's supplements.
And iodine is very inexpensive.
Very.
It is not expensive. So that's the good thing about iodine, is it doesn't cost a lot to do it.
Yeah, and with, we have it, like I said, from a very low dose all the way to some pretty high doses.
Yeah.
And that way, depending on what the person needs. Now, before you get into those really high doses, really suggest you checking it to see where your level is. So if you need to do I really need a high dose?
But honestly, when you start talking about some of they use pretty good doses on some of these studies.
They do.
They
really want you on the high end of that scale,
Yeah.
not on the bottom end. Okay, that's the key. Yeah.
So I think
We have one called triiodine. It's 3 different types of iodine, which they say is the better way of taking it is in different sources. So the triiodine, that's what I take myself.
That's what we take. Yeah.
And like I said, it's about 6 milligrams. So it's
6.25.
actually 6.25.
Yeah, I think iodine, and I remember when I was a kid, that was what your mom put on you whenever you cut your fingers. Something, they put iodine or mercurochrome.
Yeah, that's mercury.
That's mercury.
That you really don't want, but they found out mercury wasn't good for you.
Well, I imagine.
I know. But like I said, for breast health, there's so many things you can do.
Yeah.
Like I said, detoxifiers. There's things that actually help with changing the pathways of the estrogen, because as everybody's heard, a lot of times it's fed by estrogen. Not always. There's different types of breast cancer. There's different types.
Well, I'd heard also that women that breastfeed newborn babies,
that's definitely beneficial.
Very beneficial for them.
Definitely beneficial. So if you do have a baby, definitely breastfeed. But if you've already passed that point, you can't go back. So that's why I say that's not one you can always change if you've already passed that point. But if you haven't been, that's a really good thing to do.
Okay. Another question. I hardly eat any sugar. I really try to stay away from it, but everything has sugar in it.
Yep.
What is the best way to avoid diabetes? And if you get diabetes, is there any way to get rid of it?
Diet. Type 2 diabetes we are talking about, because type 1, there isn't any way to get rid of it. But type 2 is from what you're eating. And you can start making food yourself, and that way it doesn't have sugar in it. Cooking from scratch is a way to actually get rid of a lot of sugar in the diet.
Yeah.
And we do have a couple supplements we use, the Berberine Max and the GSF, which is both for blood sugar. But changing the diet is number one, and getting off of the sugar, and even fruit is sugar, so huge amounts is not good. Little bit's okay, but you don't want to go overboard.
Yeah, and a lot of people say, well, it's just so hard to stay away from. I understand.
It is.
It is, because I live that life, so to speak, staying away from it. And it is really hard to do, but you can do it.
It's harder for me than him, because I do all the cooking. So I have to do a lot of cooking to get him to keep him from staying away. Because it's hard. When you go out to eat, you don't know what you're getting.
Right.
And so you have to do a lot of home cooking. You have to know what's in the ingredients that you're using.
We had a friend who has a child that's a type 1, and they went out for a steak. So, okay, we're going to get a steak. Well, that shouldn't have sugar on it, right? So for some reason, he just asked, he said, now, there's no sugar in any of this. Oh, yeah, we put a sugar glaze on the steak.
A lot of people do.
A lot of steakhouses do that.
It makes it taste good.
It makes it look good and taste good. So, okay. Right. So you got to be really careful when you start talking about staying away from sugar, and it is so pervasive in our society. It's
I don't know. I cook a pretty darn mean steak in my air fryer, and I don't put sugar.
And don't put sugar, right?
But
exactly. You go to these places that do it. They put that sugar right on top, glaze it, and it really presentation. Great, but
I'll put a little butter on it. But
butter's different. That's
different there.
That's not sugar.
Okay, next week
we're going to be talking about autoimmune problems. And that covers a wide variety of things. But we are just going to talk. It's kind of like they're kind of on the rise, and we're just going to talk about symptoms of them and what you can do to see if you have something like that.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us this morning. You can find more information on doctorsnutrition.com or find their Facebook page for some more great information. We will be back here again next Monday morning at 9 o'clock here on WLOX CBS.
For more information on highlighting your business and services on Healthy Living South Mississippi, contact Jim Tabor at 896-1313.